Clara's eyes fluttered open to the gentle chirping of the sparrows perched on her windowsill. The morning sun bled through her sheer curtains, casting a warm golden hue over her room. It was an ordinary Tuesday morning, or so it seemed. Clara stretched, her mind still tangled in the remnants of a dream. Something about stars and whispers, and a feeling that lingered like the echo of a distant melody. As she prepared for the day, Clara's hands paused when they reached a small, leather-bound journal on her dresser. It wasn't hers, or at least, she couldn't remember buying it. Frowning, she flipped it open. The first page bore a message in an elegant, looping script that seemed to shimmer slightly in the morning light. To Clara, who has been chosen, your path begins now. Find the signs, follow them without fear. The Keeper. Confused but intrigued, Clara pocketed the journal and headed to her job at the local bookstore. The day passed in a blur of customers and book stacks, yet the journal's message gnawed at her. What path? And chosen for what? After work, Clara took her usual route through the park, but today she decided to sit by the pond, a place she found particularly calming. The water mirrored the sky, reflecting clouds that danced lazily across its surface. It was there that she encountered the first sign. A sudden gust of wind whipped through the park, rustling the leaves and pages of the book she was reading. As the wind settled, a page in her book seemed to stand out more prominently than others. It was a poem about destiny and courage, words that resonated with Clara deeply today. It felt as though the poem had chosen this moment to reveal itself to her, bolstering her resolve. Leaving the park, Clara's eyes caught sight of a street performer, a young woman with a violin. Her music soared, powerful and poignant, drawing a small crowd. The violinist's eyes met Clara's, and for a moment it felt intensely personal, as if the music was played only for her. Clara felt a warm surge of energy, an unspoken understanding that this was no ordinary performance. It was a message, another sign. That evening, Clara sat at her dining table, the journal open in front of her. She wrote about the poem and the violinist, pondering their significance. Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock at her door. Standing outside was an elderly man, his eyes twinkling with a hint of mischief. "I believe this is for you," he said, handing her a small, intricately carved box. Puzzled, Clara accepted it, and the man tipped his hat before walking away, disappearing almost too quickly around the corner. Inside the box was a compass, old and worn, but still functional. Its needle swung energetically before settling decidedly to the north. Clara knew what she had to do. She packed a bag with essentials, the journal, and the compass. Her heart pounded with the thrill of the unknown as she stepped out of her apartment. The night was cool and clear, the stars unusually bright, as if they were aligning just for her. With the journal in her pocket and the compass in her hand, Clara started north, towards the unknown, towards her mission. As the city's familiar sights faded into the background, replaced by the shadows and sounds of the unexplored, Clara felt a mix of fear and exhilaration. She was stepping into a new world, a world where she had been chosen to complete a mission she did not yet understand. But one thing was clear: her life would never be the same again. Clara walked under the starlit sky, the compass clutched tightly in her hand, guiding her steadfastly north. The cool night air was filled with the scent of pine and the distant hoot of an owl. Each step took her further from the familiar and deeper into the embrace of the unknown. As dawn broke, the trees thinned, revealing a small, secluded village nestled between the mountains. Clara hesitated at the outskirts, the compass now spinning in gentle circles, as if indicating she had reached her destination. The village was quaint, with cobblestone paths and ivy-draped cottages that seemed untouched by time. Clara made her way to the center of the village, where an ancient fountain stood. The water bubbled softly, and sitting beside it was an old woman, her hair as white as the snow on the distant mountain peaks. She was feeding a flock of birds, seemingly waiting for Clara. "You must be Clara," the woman said without looking up, her voice as clear as the mountain air. "I've been expecting you. I am Moira, your guide." How did you know I was coming? Clara asked, both curious and cautious. Moira smiled, her eyes twinkling with the same mischief as the man who had given Clara the compass. The Keeper sends his regards, and your path has been watched and prepared. You are here to uncover a truth hidden deep within these mountains, but first you must understand the signs. Clara sat beside Moira, the fountain's gentle murmur a soothing backdrop. Moira began to explain that the village was a gateway to an ancient world, one that held secrets powerful enough to change the course of history. Clara's mission was to retrieve a sacred artifact, the Crystal of Aethar, believed to contain the pure essence of the natural world. The signs you've seen are the world communicating with you, guiding you. The poem spoke of destiny, your destiny to find the crystal. The music carried the vibrations of the earth, a reminder that everything is connected. Moira detailed, her voice soft yet compelling. Clara listened intently, absorbing every word. The weight of her mission was daunting, but the initial signs had stirred something within her, a determination she never knew she possessed. Moira handed Clara a small silver pendant. This will help protect you as you journey through the Heartwood Forest. The forest is alive, and not all within it are friendly to outsiders. Thanking Moira, Clara stood, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. She followed a narrow path that led directly into the depths of the Heartwood Forest. The trees grew taller and denser, the light dimming under their thick canopy. Sounds of the forest grew louder, and the air was thick with the earthy smell of moss and decay. As she ventured deeper, Clara felt the pendant grow warm against her skin. Suddenly, a rustling in the bushes caught her attention, and a fox with unusually bright eyes appeared on the path. It looked at Clara intently before darting off into the undergrowth, pausing to look back as if beckoning her to follow. Recalling Moira's words about the world communicating with her, Clara decided to trust the sign. She followed the fox through a labyrinth of trees and overgrown vines until they reached a clearing. In the center stood an ancient tree, its trunk wide and covered in glowing markings, symbols that shimmered under Clara's gaze. The fox vanished as mysteriously as it had appeared, leaving Clara alone with the ancient tree. She approached cautiously, drawn to the symbols that seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. As she touched the trunk, the symbols glowed brighter, and a section of the tree slowly opened, revealing a hidden chamber. Inside, atop a stone pedestal, sat the Crystal of Aethar, its facets casting prisms of light around the chamber. Clara reached out, her hand trembling as she touched the crystal. Energy surged through her, visions of the Earth's past, present, and future flashing before her eyes. She understood then that her mission was more than just retrieval. It was a call to protect and preserve the essence of the world itself. As Clara stood in the hidden chamber, holding the Crystal of Aethar, the visions continued to cascade through her mind, beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. She saw the verdant forests of ancient times, sprawling and pulsing with life, then the slow encroachment of human civilizations, the cutting of trees, the carving of the earth. The crystal pulsed in her hand, its energy intertwining with her own, a profound sadness emanating from its core. Pulling herself back to the present, Clara carefully placed the crystal back onto its pedestal. The vision ceased, but the resonance of the earth's cry lingered in her mind. She stepped out of the chamber, the tree closing silently behind her, concealing its secret once more. The forest around her seemed to watch, its ancient guardians whispering on the wind. Clara knew she couldn't just walk away, not now that she understood the magnitude of what was at stake. With the crystal's energy still humming through her veins, Clara made her way back through the forest. The path seemed clearer now, as if the forest itself was guiding her, acknowledging her as a protector. By the time she emerged from the Heartwood, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the ground. Returning to the village, Clara found Moira waiting for her by the fountain, just as before. "You have seen the truth," Moira stated more than asked, her gaze piercing. "Yes," Clara replied, her voice thick with emotion. "The crystal showed me everything, the beauty of the natural world and the destruction wrought by time and human hands. What am I to do with such knowledge?" Moira stood and took Clara's hands in hers, her touch warm and reassuring. "You are to be its guardian, Clara. Not just of the crystal, but of the balance. You must help others see what you have seen, to understand that each of us holds the power to affect that balance." The weight of her new responsibility settled on Clara's shoulders like a mantle. "How can I possibly make a difference?" she asked, the doubt creeping into her voice. "By believing that you can," Moira answered simply. "Start here, with the people of this village. Teach them what you have learned. In time, they will help spread the message further." Clara spent the following days in the village, learning from Moira about the ways of the earth, the old lore of the land, and how to communicate the urgency of preservation. The villagers, initially skeptical, began to listen, moved by Clara's vivid accounts of her visions and the undeniable truth in her words. Together, they implemented changes, small at first. They tended to the forests, planting new trees and curbing practices that harmed the land. Clara's newfound purpose filled her with a sense of fulfillment she had never known, yet she knew this was only the beginning. The real challenge lay beyond the village, in the wider world where not everyone would be so receptive. One evening, as Clara walked through the village, she noticed a strange pattern of stars in the sky, aligning in a way that seemed almost deliberate. Remembering the alignment she had noticed on the night she left her city, she took it as a sign that it was time to move on. There were more people to reach, more minds to change. After a heartfelt farewell with Moira and the villagers, Clara set out once more, the silver pendant warm against her skin, a reminder of her duty. She traveled from town to town, sharing her story, the story of the crystal of Aethar, and the essential truth about the interconnectedness of all life. As she traveled, Clara gathered followers, people touched by her message and inspired by her dedication. They called themselves the Guardians of the Aethar, committed to spreading the message of balance and preservation. Clara's journey as a guardian had begun with solitary steps, but now, surrounded by a growing number of followers, it had become a movement. The Guardians of the Aethar spread across regions, each member carrying the flame ignited by Clara's conviction and the crystal's visions. As winter turned to spring, Clara found herself in a large city far from the quiet village where her mission had taken root. The city was a hub of industry and innovation, its skyline bristling with cranes and skyscrapers, a stark contrast to the tranquil, untouched wilds of the Heartwood Forest. Here, the message of environmental consciousness faced its toughest audience yet. The city was a cacophony of commerce, its citizens insulated from the rhythms of the natural world. Yet it was also where change could ripple the farthest. Clara organized gatherings in parks and open spaces, places where even a hint of nature still lingered in the urban expanse. One evening, under the canopy of a modest city park, Clara addressed a diverse crowd. Her voice carried the warmth of Moira's teachings and the urgent plea of the crystal. "We stand at a crossroads," Clara began, her eyes sweeping over the faces before her. "One path leads to further destruction, stripping the earth of its beauty, its resources, until nothing remains but barren ground. The other path is one of renewal and respect, a path where we live in harmony with the earth, not just upon it." Her words stirred the crowd, sparking discussions among groups who had never considered environmentalism as part of their daily lives. Among the audience was Elise, a local business owner whose interest in Clara's speech marked the beginning of a significant transformation. Moved by Clara's passion, Elise invited her to speak at her company, a major player in the city's tech industry. Clara accepted, and soon she was standing in a sleek conference room, the crystal's pendant hidden beneath her shirt, a constant source of strength. She presented her vision to a room full of executives and engineers, challenging them to innovate sustainably. "You have the power to create change on a monumental scale," Clara emphasized. "Imagine the impact if your projects prioritized ecological balance as much as profitability." Her message resonated, leading to the creation of a new sustainability division within the company. It was a small victory in a sea of challenges, yet it signified the potential of her mission. Clara's influence continued to grow, and with it, the Guardians of the Aethar. They established chapters in cities and towns, each group tailoring their message to their local communities. Schools began to integrate environmental education into their curriculums, inspired by Clara's visits. Local governments adopted greener policies, encouraged by the advocacy of the Guardians. Despite these successes, not all were in favor of the changes Clara advocated. Resistance came from those who saw her efforts as a threat to economic growth. Debates and confrontations became as much a part of her journey as the gatherings and speeches. During a particularly heated town hall meeting, Clara faced direct opposition from a prominent politician who argued that her environmental priorities would stall progress. "Progress at what cost?" Clara retorted, her resolve unshaken. "We risk our very planet for momentary gains. We must think beyond our lifetime." The debate was intense, drawing attention from local media. The coverage polarized public opinion, but it also brought Clara's mission into the spotlight, gaining the Guardians new supporters from unexpected quarters. As Clara continued her travels, the silver pendant remained her silent companion, reminding her of the deep connection to the earth she carried. Her path was fraught with obstacles, but each challenge reinforced her commitment. Months passed as Clara and the Guardians of the Aethar continued to weave their message across the fabric of society. Each city brought new challenges, but also new allies, and the movement's influence rippled outward in ever-widening circles. In the lush surroundings of a coastal town, Clara's path crossed with that of Dr. Lena Morris, a marine biologist whose recent research on coral bleaching had gained international attention. Lena, inspired by Clara's dedication, invited her to a symposium on marine conservation, providing a platform to bridge the gap between land and sea in the conservation efforts. At the symposium, Clara shared the podium with scientists, activists, and policymakers, her message now informed by months of advocacy and enriched by the stories of those she'd met along the way. Her speech linked the health of the forests to the vitality of the oceans, a holistic view of planetary health that resonated deeply with the audience. "Just as the trees are the lungs of our land, the oceans are the heart of our planet," Clara explained, her voice steady and compelling. "Both are vital, and both are in peril. The work to save them must be united." Her words sparked a new initiative, an alliance between terrestrial and marine conservation groups, aiming to tackle environmental issues with a unified approach. Clara and Lena worked tirelessly, facilitating workshops and joint projects that leveraged the strengths of diverse groups to foster greater environmental resilience. As summer dawned, Clara received an invitation to speak at an international environmental summit in a major European city. It was a recognition of her efforts and a testament to the growing importance of her message. Clara traveled to the summit, the silver pendant always with her, a reminder of her roots in the quiet village where her journey had begun. The summit was a convergence of global leaders and influencers in environmental policy. Clara's presentation detailed the journey of the Guardians, the successes and the obstacles, and called for an international commitment to sustainable practices. "Change is not just possible, it is essential," Clara declared before the assembly. "And it begins with us, here, today. Let's be the leaders who didn't wait for disaster to dictate our actions, but who moved preemptively to protect and preserve." Her call to action was met with applause, and the summit concluded with the signing of a declaration that endorsed broader implementation of sustainable practices, influenced heavily by Clara's advocacy. Returning from the summit, Clara felt a mixture of triumph and exhaustion. The constant travel and relentless campaigning had taken a toll on her, but the progress made fueled her resolve. However, amidst her busy schedule, a letter arrived, bearing the seal of the Keeper, the mysterious figure who had set her on this path. The letter was cryptic, suggesting that while much had been achieved, a crucial phase of her mission remained. It spoke of an upcoming challenge, one that would require all her wisdom and courage to overcome. "The final sign is yet to reveal itself," the letter concluded. "Be ready." Puzzled and intrigued, Clara pondered the Keeper's words. What could be the final sign? and what new challenge lay ahead. Determined to face whatever came, Clara convened a meeting with the senior guardians. Together they strategized, strengthening their networks and deepening their outreach, preparing for whatever might come next. As the meeting drew to a close, a young guardian rushed in, breathless with news. "There's been a development," he said, his voice urgent. "It's about the northern ice fields. They're melting at an unprecedented rate. It's worse than we feared." Instantly, Clara knew this was the sign the Keeper had forewarned, the final test of her mission's reach and her leadership. She gathered her materials, ready to confront this new crisis head-on. The urgency in the young guardian's voice as he relayed news of the rapidly melting northern ice fields resonated deeply with Clara. She knew that this crisis was not just another hurdle. It was a climactic challenge that could define the future of the planet. Gathering her most trusted guardians, Clara prepared for a journey to the Arctic, determined to witness the crisis firsthand and mobilize global action. Arriving in the Arctic, the stark beauty of the ice-laden landscape was overshadowed by the undeniable signs of distress. Vast expanses of ice were visibly thinner, and large patches of dark water stood where ice once stretched unbroken to the horizon. The local communities, primarily indigenous peoples, were the most affected, their traditional ways of life threatened by the changing climate. Clara and her team set up camp near a research station, where scientists were documenting the changes with a mix of precision and despair. Partnering with these researchers, Clara began to compile data and testimonies, building a comprehensive report that she planned to present at an emergency environmental conference scheduled in the coming weeks. Every day, Clara ventured out with the scientists, observing the melting ice, the struggling wildlife, and the increasingly unstable weather patterns. One afternoon, as she stood at the edge of a newly formed ice fissure, Clara felt the ground tremble beneath her feet. A loud crack echoed through the air as a significant portion of the ice shelf broke away, drifting into the ocean. The moment was a visceral reminder of the planet's fragility, and it strengthened Clara's resolve. Returning to camp, she spoke with the indigenous leaders, listening to their insights and the changes they had observed over generations. Their stories were a powerful testament to the interconnectedness of all life and the catastrophic impact of human negligence on the environment. With the data and personal stories collected, Clara worked through the nights, drafting her presentation for the upcoming conference. Her report not only detailed the scientific data, but also wove in the personal stories of those directly affected by the melting ice fields. She intended to present a narrative that was both informative and profoundly moving, designed to stir the international community to action. As the conference approached, Clara and her team traveled to Geneva, where delegates from around the world were gathering to discuss the climate crisis. Clara's session was one of the most anticipated, her reputation as a dedicated environmental advocate having preceded her. Standing before the Global Assembly, Clara presented her findings. She spoke of the urgent need for a unified global response to climate change, highlighting the rapid ice melt as a dire warning of what was to come if immediate action was not taken. "We are here today not just to talk but to commit to action," Clara urged the Assembly. "We must set aside our differences and work together, for the issue at hand respects no borders. It threatens us all equally." Her presentation was met with a standing ovation, and intense discussions followed. The conference concluded with the signing of several significant agreements, including substantial funding for climate resilience projects and stricter regulations on emissions worldwide. Exhausted but hopeful, Clara returned to the Arctic to relay the outcomes to the indigenous communities and researchers. They greeted the news with a mixture of skepticism and hope, aware of the promises made in the past, but heartened by Clara's commitment. As winter approached, Clara stayed in the Arctic, helping to implement new environmental monitoring systems and working closely with the communities to adapt to their changing environment. She knew that the road ahead would be long and fraught with challenges, but she also knew that the Guardians of the Aethar were making a real difference. The Arctic's chilling winds and the stark white horizon had become familiar sights to Clara as she worked through the winter months. The Guardians of the Aethar, under her leadership, had become a force of nature themselves, galvanizing communities and leaders to take tangible steps toward mitigating climate change. As spring approached, Clara received an invitation to speak at a series of global forums designed to foster collaboration between nations on environmental issues. These forums, held in various locations around the world, aim to turn the agreements made at the Geneva Conference into actionable plans. Clara began her tour in Asia, where she met with government officials and activists in China and India, two of the world's largest contributors to global emissions. Her message was clear and consistent. The need for immediate and sustained action to combat climate change was an imperative that transcended all national and economic boundaries. In Beijing, Clara introduced innovative green technologies that had been developed by some of her corporate allies. She advocated for renewable energy projects, emphasizing the economic benefits of such investments. In India, she focused on agricultural practices that could reduce water usage and increase crop yields without harming the environment. Each forum concluded with the drafting of local action plans, which included commitments to reduce carbon footprints, invest in sustainable technologies, and preserve natural habitats. Clara's relentless schedule was exhausting, but seeing the incremental changes, each a step toward a larger goal, kept her driven. From Asia, Clara traveled to Africa, a continent profoundly affected by climate change yet rich in potential solutions. In Kenya, she visited drought-stricken areas and spoke with farmers about irrigation techniques that conserved water. In Nigeria, she helped set up training programs for solar panel installation, tapping into the country's abundant sunshine. Her next stop was South America, where the Amazon rainforest was under constant threat from deforestation. Clara met with local leaders and global NGOs to discuss strategies for protecting the rainforest and using its resources sustainably. Her efforts there led to the establishment of a multinational conservation fund specifically for rainforest areas across the continent. Throughout her travels, Clara maintained close communication with the Guardian's headquarters, now a bustling hub of activity with teams dedicated to different aspects of the global effort. They monitored the progress of various initiatives, provided resources where needed, and continued to spread their educational programs worldwide. After months of travel, Clara returned to Europe, where the final forum was to take place. This forum was particularly significant, intended to unify the various national plans into a comprehensive global strategy. Delegates from over 100 countries attended, each bringing their own perspectives and experiences to the table. During the forum, Clara took a moment to reflect on her journey. She remembered the initial confusion and fear she had felt when she first received the Keeper's Journal. Now, she stood before the world as a leader in a global movement, a far cry from the uncertain woman who had once sat by a village fountain, listening to an old woman's tales. The final day of the forum arrived, and Clara delivered a powerful closing speech. She spoke of unity and collective responsibility, invoking the spirit of cooperation that had brought them all together. "We are the custodians of this planet, and we hold its future in our hands," Clara declared. "Together we have taken significant steps, but the journey continues. Let us proceed with the courage to implement what we have planned, and the wisdom to adapt as we learn." The conference ended with a global pact signed by all attending nations, committing to specific time-bound targets to combat climate change. It was a monumental achievement, and as Clara watched the signatures being collected, she felt a mixture of pride and relief. As the excitement of the global pact settled, Clara found herself back in the quiet solitude of the village where her journey had begun. The world around her was now actively engaged in the fight against climate change, and while the road ahead remained daunting, there was a palpable sense of momentum. Yet, Clara felt a need to reconnect with her roots and gather her thoughts before continuing her work. During her stay in the village, Clara frequently visited the ancient fountain where she first met Moira. It was here, one crisp morning, that she encountered the Keeper, the enigmatic figure who had set her on this path. He appeared quietly, almost blending into the early morning mist that hung over the village. "Clara, you have done well," the Keeper said, his voice both old and timeless. "But the time has come for you to understand more about why you were chosen." Clara listened intently as the keeper explained that the guardians of the Ithar were part of an ancient lineage of protectors, dating back centuries. Each generation had a keeper who would select a new guardian when the time was right. The crystal, the journal, and even the signs that guided her were all part of a legacy that bound her to this sacred duty. The challenges you faced were not just trials. They were also lessons designed to prepare you for this role, the keeper continued. You were not merely chosen. You were destined. The revelation was overwhelming, yet it filled Clara with a profound sense of purpose. The responsibilities she bore were not random. They were her inheritance and her contribution to a lineage that protected the earth. The keeper handed Clara a small, intricately carved box, similar to the one she had received at the beginning of her journey. Inside was a second crystal, twin to the first, except this one glowed with a soft blue light. This crystal represents the knowledge of the sea, just as the first represented the knowledge of the land, the keeper explained. Together, they have the power to balance the Earth's energies. You must use them to heal the wounds we have inflicted upon our planet. Armed with new understanding and the twin crystals, Clara set out to expand her mission. The Guardians of the Aethar grew in number and scope, now not only addressing climate change, but also working towards restoring the natural balance of the environment. Clara's next steps involved deep collaboration with scientists and spiritual leaders around the world. They worked together to understand the best ways to use the crystal's energies to stabilize climate patterns and rejuvenate barren lands. As the months passed, Clara organized a series of global meditations, inviting people from all walks of life to connect with the Earth's energy through the crystals. These events, broadcasted globally, had a remarkable unifying effect on the participants, fostering a deeper, more personal commitment to environmental stewardship across cultures and communities. One significant breakthrough was the development of a method to purify polluted waters using the crystal of the sea. Piloted in a heavily polluted river in Asia, the project was a resounding success, leading to similar initiatives in other parts of the world. Meanwhile, the crystal of the land was used to restore fertility to desertified areas in Africa, transforming them back into arable land that could sustain crops and support local communities. Clara's leadership had evolved from activism to a form of environmental stewardship that bridged science and spirituality, making the Guardians of the Ithar a unique and powerful force in the ongoing battle to protect and preserve the planet. As Clara's understanding deepened, so too did her connection to the Earth and its myriad rhythms. With the twin crystal's power now harnessed, her role as a guardian took on new dimensions, integrating ancient wisdom with modern science in innovative, impactful ways. Despite the successes, Clara knew the road ahead remained fraught with challenges. Climate change was a relentless foe, its impacts widespread and devastating. But with each small victory, the Guardians of the Ithar gained more supporters, their influence spreading like the roots of a mighty tree. In this chapter of her journey, Clara focused on education and empowerment. She established the Ithar Academy, a global institution with campuses around the world dedicated to teaching environmental stewardship and sustainable practices. The curriculum combined traditional ecological knowledge with cutting-edge science, creating a new generation of environmental leaders. The academy also served as a research hub, developing technologies that leverage the properties of the crystals to create sustainable energy solutions. One such breakthrough was a solar panel design that significantly increased efficiency and decreased production costs, making solar energy more accessible worldwide. Clara also launched a series of global initiatives aimed at preserving biodiversity. The Seeds of Tomorrow project was one such initiative, creating gene banks that preserve the seeds of thousands of plant species at risk of extinction. These banks were not just storehouses, but living libraries, where plants were cultivated and studied to understand their roles in their ecosystems better. Amidst these endeavors, Clara continued to travel, speaking at conferences, visiting project sites, and participating in fieldwork. Her life was a whirlwind of activity, each day different from the last, yet each driven by her unwavering commitment to her mission. During a visit to the Amazon rainforest, Clara worked with local tribes to map out critical areas for conservation. Using drones and satellite technology, they identified regions affected by illegal logging and mining and implemented smart sensor networks to monitor these areas in real time, providing data that helped local authorities combat environmental crimes more effectively. Back in the village where her journey began, Clara found solace and strength. It was during one such visit that she received news of an emerging environmental crisis in the Arctic. Methane releases from thawing permafrost were accelerating. Recognizing the gravity of the situation, Clara mobilized a team of scientists and guardians to address it. Using a combination of geoengineering techniques and the crystal's energy, they developed a method to stabilize the permafrost in critical areas. The project was risky and required careful, continuous management, but early results were promising, showing a slowdown in methane emissions. As the Aethar Academy's first graduating class prepared for their commencement, Clara reflected on the journey. The once uncertain path had led her to remarkable places and taught her profound truths about the world and herself. She had become more than a guardian. She was a mentor, a leader, and a symbol of hope. The commencement ceremony was a celebration of achievements and a reminder of the responsibilities each graduate carried into the world. Clara's keynote speech was a powerful call to action. "Today marks a beginning, not an end," Clara declared. "You are the new guardians of the Aethar, bearers of knowledge and champions of the earth. Go forth with courage, for you carry our hopes with you." As the years passed, Clara watched with pride and humility as her efforts and those of the guardians of the Aethar rippled across the globe. The Aethar Academy had become a beacon of hope and innovation, its graduates leading the charge in sustainable development and environmental protection. Now an elder, Clara's role evolved from active leadership to that of an advisor and visionary. Her legacy was not just in the projects and policies she had helped to implement, but in the culture of environmental stewardship she had fostered. In this final chapter of her journey, Clara focused on solidifying this legacy. She established the Guardian Trust, a global endowment to ensure the long-term funding and independence of the Aethar Academy and its associated projects. The trust also provided grants for grassroots environmental movements around the world, empowering local communities to protect and manage their natural resources. Clara also authored several books, drawing on her decades of experience. Her writings became essential readings in environmental studies, blending narratives of her adventures with practical guidance on environmental management and conservation. Her memoir, in particular, became a bestseller, inspiring a new generation to take up the mantle of environmental guardianship. The twin crystals, once the harbingers of her mission, were now housed in a special exhibit at the Aethar Academy, accessible to all. They served as a symbol of the balance between technology and nature, a core tenet of the Guardian's philosophy. One crisp autumn day, Clara returned to the village where it all began. She walked slowly to the ancient fountain, her steps measured but sure. Sitting quietly, she reflected on the journey, the trials, the victories, and the inevitable losses. As the sun set, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, a young woman approached her, a recent graduate of the Aethar Academy. "Miss Clara," the young woman began, her voice tinged with respect and a hint of nervousness. "I wanted to thank you. Your work changed my life. It gave me purpose. I've been chosen to lead a new project in the Sahara, converting desolate areas back into fertile land." Clara smiled, her eyes gleaming with tears of joy. "Thank you for continuing the fight," she said. "Remember, each small step contributes to a much larger journey. You are part of a legacy now, one that will continue long after we are gone." As they talked, the keeper appeared, his presence as calm and mysterious as the day he first introduced Clara to her destiny. "The cycle continues," he said, nodding to both of them. "The world is in capable hands." In the years that followed, Clara gradually stepped away from day-to-day operations, her public appearances becoming rare as she chose a quieter life. However, her influence remained, felt in the ongoing work of the Guardians and seen in the thriving ecosystems and rejuvenated communities around the world. Clara passed away quietly one winter morning, her last days spent in the village among friends and nature. Her funeral was attended by thousands, with millions more paying tribute worldwide. The legacy of Clara, the chosen guardian, lived on, a testament to the power of one person to make a difference and the strength of many to change the world. The Guardians of the Aethar continued their work, each new generation finding innovative ways to protect the planet, guided by the principles Clara had laid down. The Earth, with all its beauty and challenges, remained the ultimate guardian they all served. While Clara's story had reached its natural end, the world she influenced continued to evolve. The Guardians of the Aethar, now a global institution, faced new challenges and opportunities as they stepped into the future that Clara had helped to shape. This chapter begins with a new protagonist, Leo, a young and passionate environmental scientist who had just graduated from the Aethar Academy. Leo had been deeply inspired by Clara's memoirs, which were part of his curriculum at the academy. Her dedication had instilled in him a fervent desire to contribute meaningfully to the environmental movement. As the newest leader of a pivotal project in the Sahara, Leo was determined to honor Clara's legacy by transforming barren lands back into flourishing ecosystems, the challenge in the Sahara. The Sahara Project, known as the Green Heart Initiative, aimed to combat desertification using cutting-edge technology and traditional ecological knowledge. Leo's first weeks on the project were spent in intensive planning sessions with his team, consisting of botanists, ecologists, and local tribal leaders who knew the desert's secrets. Their strategy was multifaceted, focusing on water conservation techniques such as fog nets and dew collectors, which could harvest atmospheric moisture. They also planned to introduce drought-resistant plant species that could help stabilize the soil and gradually begin to reverse the desertification process. Local collaboration and challenges. Working closely with the local communities was essential. Leo learned quickly that the success of any environmental initiative depended as much on the people involved as on the technology used. He held community meetings, listened to the concerns of the local tribes, and adapted the project plans to include their input, ensuring that the initiative provided benefits that were felt directly by the local population. However, the project faced significant challenges. Sandstorms and unpredictable weather patterns often set back their efforts. Equipment failures and logistical difficulties also tested the team's resolve. Leo had to navigate these challenges while keeping his team motivated and focused on their long-term goals. Innovations and breakthroughs. Despite the hurdles, the team achieved remarkable breakthroughs. A particularly exciting development was the creation of a super-absorbent polymer that could retain large amounts of water and slowly release it into the soil. This innovation significantly increased the survival rate of planted seedlings and was soon being used in other arid regions around the world. The Guardians Summit. 2 years into the project, Leo was invited to speak at the Guardians Summit, an annual event that gathered leaders of various environmental initiatives to share progress, ideas, and strategies. Standing on the stage, Leo felt a surge of pride and responsibility. He shared his experiences, the innovative approaches they had developed, and the lessons learned from working in harmony with the local communities. His presentation received enthusiastic feedback, and many expressed interest in applying the Sahara's learned strategies in other desertification-prone areas. The summit proved to be a fruitful ground for collaboration, and Leo left with new contacts and fresh ideas to further his work. Reflections and forward motion. Back in the Sahara, as Leo watched a newly planted area begin to thrive, he felt a deep connection to Clara's vision. The land was slowly turning green, a testament to the resilience of nature and the human spirit. Leo documented the project's progress meticulously, intending to contribute a chapter to the next edition of Clara's memoirs. He wanted future students of the Aethar Academy to learn from their successes and failures, to inspire them as Clara had inspired him. As the sun set over the rejuvenating Sahara, Leo felt hopeful. The world was still full of challenges, but as a guardian of the Aethar, he was ready to meet them head-on, guided by the legacy of those who had paved the way. Leo's project in the Sahara, the Green Heart Initiative, was starting to see tangible results. The once barren land was now sprouting with life, attracting the attention of environmentalists and governments from across the globe. As Leo navigated the complexities of his role, he realized that the impact of their work could extend far beyond the immediate geographic region. Global network and environmental impact. Encouraged by the success of the superabsorbent polymer and other sustainable technologies, Leo decided to expand the reach of the Green Heart Initiative. He envisioned a global network that could tackle desertification in other parts of the world, sharing knowledge and resources to combat environmental degradation on a larger scale. To achieve this, Leo planned the first international conference on combating desertification, hosted in the Sahara. The conference aimed to bring together experts, policymakers, and activists to forge a united front against desertification. The preparation was intense, with Leo and his team working tirelessly to organize panels, workshops, and exhibitions showcasing their work. Cultural exchange and learning. As the conference day approached, delegates from various countries arrived, each bringing unique insights and experiences. The event was a melting pot of cultures and ideas, fostering a rich exchange of knowledge. Leo introduced a special program during the conference called Voices from the Land, where local tribes shared their historical experiences with the desert environment, emphasizing the importance of traditional knowledge in ecological restoration. This session was particularly impactful, highlighting how modern practices could be harmoniously integrated with ancient wisdom to achieve more sustainable outcomes. The delegates were deeply moved, gaining a greater appreciation for the cultural dimension of environmental work. Breakthroughs and collaborations. During the conference, several key collaborations were formed. A notable one was with a team from Australia who had developed a drone technology that could plant seeds over large areas of land efficiently. Leo saw the potential to integrate this technology with their work in the Sahara, increasing the scale of their reforestation efforts dramatically. Another breakthrough came from a workshop where scientists presented a new irrigation technique that used solar energy to extract water from the air, which could significantly reduce the water scarcity issues in arid regions. Leo immediately recognized the applicability of this technology for the Sahara and initiated a pilot project, Reflections and Future Directions. As the conference concluded, Leo felt a profound sense of accomplishment and hope. The connections formed during the event had strengthened the global fight against desertification, creating a network of motivated individuals and groups working towards a common goal. Back at his camp, as Leo watched the sunset over the newly flourishing land, he reflected on the journey that had brought him here. He thought of Clara, whose legacy had ignited this flame of change, and felt a deep connection to her vision. He was no longer just a participant in this movement. He was now a leader, helping to weave the threads of connection that could bring about real and lasting change to the world. Leo penned his thoughts in a journal, planning to share these reflections in his next communication with the Aethar Academy. He wanted to convey not just the success of their projects, but also the spirit of collaboration and unity that was essential to their work. As the stars began to pepper the night sky, Leo felt energized by the challenges and opportunities that lay ahead. The road was long, but as each day passed, he was helping to write a new chapter in the story of the Earth's restoration, a story that would hopefully inspire many generations to come.